And in particular, there's like, I think the 2 first weeks of Sagadawa are particularly important, and that's what starts today. And so it's a good time to make merit, to engage in intensive practice, take precepts, perform generosity, and things like that. So there's a Mani retreat starting, 100 million Mani retreat starting through our network of Buddhist centers, FPMT. So Manoshi has posted something about that. So connected with this, as this is the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, on the sort of main day, which I believe is the 31st of this month of Sagadawa, which happens to fall on a Sunday, which is great for us, Geshe will give the oral transmission of the Paktu. So the Paktu, which is really just means, which the Tibetans kind of have a short name for it because it's so well known. It's maybe not as well known in the West. It's a prayer to Avalokiteshvara by the 7th Dalai Lama, Losang Kelsang Gyatso. And so this is a really beautiful, evocative prayer, and Geshe will give the oral transmission for this on the 31st. Geshe was also listening to some advice from His Holiness the Dalai Lama that said it's very good to take the Bodhisattva vows or renew the Bodhisattva vows during the holy month of Sagadawa. So he also told me he will do a really short Bodhisattva vow and Bodhisattva vow renewal ceremony along with that. So that's the 31st. And then the next big event for Geshe and myself is going to be the 14th. The 14th of June, Geshe will give a white Haruka or white Chakra Samvara longevity initiation. All of that information has gone up, as well as a registration page. So if you're participating from home, just to be clear, you don't need to register. You don't need to register. It's just for folks who are going to come in person to Ontario, to Burlington, Ontario, to participate. And we're asking for registration so that we can organize venues, snacks, and so forth. But this will be streamed for folks in other areas. And if you're participating via streaming, you'll get information on how to join with that soon. You don't need to register. And then the last thing that I should mention is that Geshe-la's highest Yoga Tantra commentary for this month, it will be next Saturday. It will be next Saturday. So I think that's all that I wanted to say. We have other programs ongoing, the book group, meditation group in the morning, and other things like that. If you want to keep kind of on top of what's happening here, please register for our newsletter. Having said that, I see we're at 1 minute past 10, so I'll invite Geshe. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, make yourselves comfortable. So welcome everybody. Great to see everybody again. Nice to be back. So I hope that everyone's doing well. It looks like you can hear me, but let's just do a quick sound check for Geshe. Tesunam.
Can
Can you hear Geshe? Okay. All right, then let us get started.
This way.
Oh, sorry. So greetings all Dharma friends. Geshe said most of you he hasn't seen the last 2 weeks, so nice to see everybody. He hopes that you are all well and happy, and he hopes that in particular you're putting some energy as much as you can to improve your study and your practice of the teachings. So then, of course, as we gather today, there will be some of us who are practitioners of the Dharma or Buddhists, some of us who are not necessarily practitioners, not necessarily Buddhists, but whether we are Buddhist or not, whether we believe in things like past and future lifetimes for naught, for example, we all want peace and happiness. And this is a sort of the spirit in which we gather together for events such as this.
So
this is not, of course, the vastest motivation, but nonetheless it is an important one to consider, because this is a basic need that all of us share, is this need for greater peace and happiness. So, of course, in terms of outer conditions, we know that there are constant difficulties and dangers that we are encountering all the time. So, outer conditions, although, important, they are not the main place to put our hope, our aspirations, and so forth. We need to put them in something vaster, more stable or reliable than that. So in terms of the difficulties, for example, if we think of the outer environment, all of those difficulties and obstacles that are manifesting, even with how advanced we are, there's nobody who can just get rid of those outer and environmental obstacles so easily. This is very difficult. So, if we understand this, then we understand that we must look internally. And if internally we develop minds such as love, such as compassion, such as the wish to benefit others, and so forth, we will be able to achieve a stable mind, and all of the outer difficulties that are coming and so forth, we will be able to experience them with more equanimity. So the love, the compassion, and these other sort of virtuous minds that we develop within ourselves, these contribute to our own peace and happiness. They also are a contribution to the peace and well-being of those around us, right? It impacts those who are close to us, all of the people there that we are encountering, even the animals and so forth. And because of this, then those outer difficulties and obstacles that manifest, they will not seem as serious. They will not be as disturbing. Similarly, though, in terms of the negative aspects or negative qualities within our mind, such as self-cherishing, if we don't take steps to reduce or counteract that, then we will experience more mental projection, we will experience more suspicion, more unease, more unhappiness, right? This is very clear.
Ota tenichi ita shomba niji sedeate teni tachi ki lemelo matipa ta deshi nika ina deshi zawa ta tu ina deshi zawa te hakokuyares.
And so it's important to sort of think about these reasons and experiences and develop this understanding that minds like love and compassion, not only are they important from the point of view of ultimate happiness, but they are conditions for a greater temporary happiness as well.
Ta ngarosodo ta tele chota mochia te se karwa ta duni tani rewa ta poge. And
so, of course, connected with this, but beyond the temporary, many of us gathered are aspiring bodhisattvas, and so our wish is to cultivate these to be able to traverse the bodhisattva path and to eventually be able to reach the goal of complete and perfect Buddhahood. Yeah. And so the root of traversing the bodhisattva paths, the root of reaching the state of complete enlightenment of a Buddha, these are love and compassion.
And
it's really important also to cultivate this awareness that working for the welfare of others is actually the best means to accomplish our own welfare in a stable way as well.
So Lama
Tsongkhapa says in the Lama Rimchamo, in the Great Treatise, and the Tingpo, the Middling Treatise, that through cultivating the welfare of others, one's own welfare is naturally achieved. So this is an important principle.
And
so for that to be cultivated in a stable way, then we want a mind that is peaceful, that is even. So we will just take a moment to relax the mind. So from touching the fundamental mind, tapping into its equanimity, then any difficult thoughts, feelings, mental projections, these slowly just dissolve away, just like bubbles on the surface of moving water eventually burst. So just like when the wind ceases to blow, the waves on the surface of the ocean dissolve back into it, and the vastness, the clarity, and the purity of the water becomes apparent. It is the same when we still our mind. We touch this sense of peace. When we observe it in this peaceful state, we see that the mind's nature is like the sun, luminous, vast, and bright. In this way, we should use the mind's quality to develop an understanding of the way things really are, their ultimate mode of abiding.
Aros me te ane me li li te banya jog do na chi to ne ta shi li nongi li kani tu ta shwa le chi ne ta.
So then let us take our attention to this basis of our human form, this basis of the human body, and in the spirit of the four foundations or the four close applications of mindfulness, we will cultivate a mindfulness of the body, both its coarser outer forms and its more subtle inner parts.
Me li te to me se ni te nyondo chapala te ne ta shomba ni ji ta se ge ye te karajaba ina yo ane de ni ta go to ya te tanji ge te za chi mo yim ba te kaze te mo shi ba ji.
So cultivate this recognition that this human form, the union of this human body and mind, possesses all of the characteristics necessary for us to be able to hear, meditate upon love, compassion, and other positive mental qualities, and bring them to perfection.
Jiba ina yo ta lungbo che do ta do zi de ji ko ba ge kari ina ni pa man ro yo du yo arte ne man nu ji ga se to shomba ni ji kari ina yo ta yo ga te no le che ya man du was.
In terms of physical forms, if we think of the physical forms of other living beings, like elephants, like lions, like tigers, and so forth, they're perhaps more powerful than the form that we possess right now. But it's very difficult for those types of beings to be able to bring forth minds of love, compassion, and other positive qualities.
Tendri te za chimbo te jame ba je me ba o ta tendri te ne nye le to le ji ji mombo ji la te ne shuwa yin ba te.
And this human body, we should understand that this perfect basis does not arise without causes and conditions. It arises from substantial cause and many co-concordant causes that are difficult to accumulate.
Rosuru soso ngama shewa ngama tigata kale mombo jane muge chipung tsrla soba zoji sui tune tapage jamombo done shwaji.
So we can understand that this form we have now, it's only due to great effort in previous lifetimes to accumulate its causes. In particular, through practicing the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues and so forth. This is why we have this human form now.
Jinni patane jetji mayimba jimba sute zewa ta jeso paje twila so patso shine ho jetji mombo ji doni ta shuma ji yimba.
So in addition to that foundational cause of ethics, then there are many other assisting causes that we also need to cultivate. Our practices of love, compassion, aspects of the 6 perfections like patience, effort, and so forth. All of these things are causes of this current good fortune we have now. And in addition to that, all of these various practices and merits that we cultivated, they must be complete in the beginning, the middle, and the end, which means we cultivated them stably in a very complete way. This is another reason that we have this human form. So, having this basis of a human rebirth, then making sure we don't engage in actions that are going to pull us back, but in actions which will continue to help us improve our positive mental qualities until we can reach that final state of lasting happiness. Connected with this motivation, may I myself be able to accumulate all the causes for temporary and final happiness, and may I be able to help others cultivate the causes of temporary and ultimate happiness. For this purpose, I make single-pointed requests to the holy beings to bestow their blessings. So we'll do the preliminary prayers. Tembal chom den de jin je ba da chom ba yan da ba zo pe sang je ba dang shab su den ba de wa she ba je den gem ba je bu de we ka lo gyur wa la na me ba la dang mi nam gi temba sangye chom den de be jawa shakya tu pa la cha se lo che de kya su chi ho temba chom den de de je ba cha chom ba yang da ba zo be sangye je ba dang sha su demba de wa she ba je den chamba che bu de we ka lo jor la na me ba la do mi nam gi den ba song ge chong den de pe ja wa sha kya tu ba la cha se lo che de kya su ji ho den ba chong den de de je ba cha chong ba yang da ba zo be song je ba dang sha su den ba de wa she ba je den chamba che bu de we ka lo jor la na me ba la da mi nam gi den ba song ge chong den de pe ja wa sha kya tu ba la cha se lo che de kya su ji ho den ba sorry 3 times my bad. He said that I didn't meditate properly during the session. That's why the mind lost track of that. Okay, so we will do the short mandala offering. I was making noise during the meditation. I thought I'd lost my notebook. That was why, but it's found now. So ji pege je me do tra je ra lin ji ni de gyamba de sangye jindo me de buwa ge jogo nanda je la je ba sho i dam guru ratna mendala kam niryata yami. So Geshe-la will lead the refuge in bodhicitta. Chedon sogi chenam la changchu badu dani gyabsu chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi jola penche sangye joba sho. Chedon sogi chenam la changchu badu dani gyabsu chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi jola penche sangye joba sho. Chedon sogi chenam la changchu badu dani gyabsu chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi jola penche sangye joba sho.
Oh yeah, that three. Oh, that's a doing no jinganzo. Young Jews, Tsunny Tinita, Gavayina Doche, Gavayina Doche, or Tenisigares.
So, of course, normally you know that we share that when activities are complete in the beginning, the middle, and the end, they are more powerful, of greater import, and this goes for both wholesome and unwholesome actions.
Oh, that Tari Tissetini, Telejo Mundawa, Yenasaga, the Tissenilata, Gava, or Gava Jabayina, Gava, Gava G Jabayina, this higher Momoloya.
So this is very important to mention today more than usually, because of course today is the beginning of this period of the holy month of Sagadawa. And in some texts, it says that it's even millions of times by which actions are multiplied in this holy time. And this goes for both our wholesome actions as well as the unwholesome ones.
Bujadawa Sigurten, she would tomba Kapasukas and 10 nondus.
Boomchen. Boomchik, ale, loser.
Bogdawa.
Boomgidawa.
Oh, in a 10 nondut, and the Sayaka catcher.
So Geshe said some scholars called this the month of the boom, so it's like things are multiplied by 100,000 times or hundreds of thousands of times. But other scholars disputed this and said that actually 100,000 multiplication is not sufficient. It's by millions of times that the potentials of various karmas are multiplied in this month. So then, of course, whatever point of view you are holding, you see that it is a very precious opportunity in terms of the accumulation of merit. And one of the reasons that merits are multiplied during these holy days is because they are sort of, in a way, the anniversary of the time where the Buddha did three very important things. And so then some of you will know already, but for example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche always thought it very important to recognize these occasions for the accumulation of merit, also sees that the deity of Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara is particularly effective for this. So now we have opportunities to accumulate the Mani mantra and to engage in practices related to Chenrezig. So Geshe said to encourage people in that, then he thought to use the opportunity of the most important day of this holy month, which is on the 31st, to give the oral transmission of the Bhakta praise to Avalokiteshvara by the 7th Dalai Lama. Oh, right. To encourage people, right, to engage in these practices. And then also his idea is that once we finish recognizing my mother in Experiential Song of the View, Geshe-la will give the side commentary on the topic of this Bhakta praise to Chenrezig prayer. So that is sort of his plan going forward. So then, with this awareness, bring forth an especially joyful mind today, an especially joyful mind and aspiration, thinking today is a wonderful opportunity to accumulate vast stores of wholesome merit. And let us place the body and mind into a state of peace. So, cultivating mindfulness awareness of the rising and falling of the breath to begin. And the way to do this is by counting 9 inhalations and exhalations. Trying to do that several times to bring the mind into a state of peace. And to conclude that, what we do is we inhale very deeply, hold it for a moment, then exhale very deeply and hold it for a moment. Think like settling a glass of water down and having it clarified and purified. In the same way, our mind is now peaceful and clear. With this peaceful aspect of the luminous mind, which is moon-like, think, I will direct my gentle attention to examine phenomena, to come to this understanding that things do not necessarily exist in the way that they appear. So think that from this sphere of emptiness arises a beautiful, pure Buddha field, a pure land, like Dewachen or Sukhavati, the land of ultimate bliss. Within this environment, the ground, the water, trees, and so forth, everything gives rise to bliss and happiness in the mind. There is nothing that could give rise to suffering. The flowers, trees, fruits, and so forth, everything that we come into contact arises a blissful, happy state within the mind.
ji pusu tsuba tandi di no la rongen da che no ga ti la yu chu pusu tsuba de pusu tsuba sunje tin de da ja ge tempa ma on de ne she yo sam so much.
So then we imagine that within this perfect field, upon a beautiful throne, upon which sit the cushions of lotus, moon, and sun, appears our teacher, fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni.
Yaye lengembo la de jawa shombala subata papa tumela subata bendu chidi o ta jago kepa kanga pe kepa musu zubate ta tsuba no yo sombachi.
You can imagine that surrounding Buddha Shakyamuni are figures like Nagarjuna, Asanga, Chandrakirti, and so forth, the 17 great Panditas of Nālandā, and the other holy beings of Tibet and other places.
Shaya matsuwa me patita page yon ye petine rondo nyondolo ro arju seji yuzu me no bachi jipa do teva ota ni je to dembe tone ta page rewa jasha ja ota chini ta shan ro tembo chini yo somba.
And surrounding us, starting with our father and mother on either side of us, are all 6 types of sentient beings, but in human form. They bring forth the minds of fear, faith, and great compassion necessary to arise the uncommon Mahāyāna refuge with 100% conviction, placing all of their hopes in the objects of refuge we have visualized.
Rongin dali yo ken ro richu me no bachi yuzu ji la ko dewa shi bi nimbo za chimbo de cha de yare o kanga za chimbo yi kanga de zon de ma ni so bachi.
Then direct your attention to yourself and all those beings surrounding you. Think that every single one of them possesses the Tathagata Garbha, the Tathagata essence, the potential for enlightenment. Therefore, every single one of them is precious, and not only that, I am connected. Every single one of them is close to me.
Nye za cheshu o ta koro tndi chi za ta de do ge te kange se ya dewa de ya te ta ngaro rol ta nge te yo lenge te yo so mo.
Because all of these beings are the dearest to me, are the closest to me, it is my responsibility to help them reduce their problems and suffering. It is my responsibility to lead them to a meaningful happiness.
Uje den kange ta chet se na de ro o tan do le yo ke so ji chu den de koro kompo to ba no ji o ke jo so kompo so ji kompo ta to ba so yi so mi to ni jo ju se.
So think, in order to be able to benefit myself and others in this way, I must go beyond my limited state and achieve the same enlightenment that Buddha Shakyamuni achieved. I must actualize the 3 jewels within myself, just as Buddha Shakyamuni did.
Tndi shando do se she gombe tola tene sha ye de ta le ta yo so zo be tu ka ne ge ze te do nyon do la te se ge ze cha ba ba no ji ru ru so so ta ro ri tu yo zu sho ne ma shu so so.
From bringing forth these unparalleled minds of bodhicitta and refuge, the assembled holy beings become pleased with us. From their hearts, light rays and nectars manifest and fall upon myself and the assembly of all sentient beings like a steady rain of blessings, entering and purifying us. I think that through this rain of blessings, all of our illnesses, both coarse and subtle, they become completely diminished and then completely cleared away, so that there's no pinpointable, findable illness at all. Just like a pipe that was once clogged is cleared through a clean stream jet of water, in the same way our body and minds are purified. So think all of our difficulties of body, whether we visualize them being purified, moving downwards, moving upwards, or disappearing in a heap, all of these difficulties of body and their causes are completely cleared away. All of the channels, drops and prana, the wind, whatever was out of balance, whatever was weakening, these have been restored and are brought back to equilibrium. In this way, we feel different, more well than before. In this way, through these blessings and this visualization, myself and all sentient beings, our bodies and minds are cleared of difficulty and brought to a state of blissful well-being, of happiness. So thinking, I've had the opportunity with this meditation to contribute something to the welfare of others on this first holy day of Sagadawa. Rejoice in that. Oh, yes. Yeah. So Geshe said this this point about the Tathagata Garbha, or the Tathagata essence, and the actualization ourselves of the three jewels. His mind was thinking about this because of his recent teachings on the Uttara Tantra Shastra in the Netherlands last week. And so Geshe says that his plan also for our audience here is to maybe take as a side topic eventually the Uttara Tantra Shastra and go through each of those verses and their important meanings as well. So he has the intention to share those teachings here as well. So one of the reasons ourselves and others are precious are because of what we call the element, the Tathagata essence, or Tathagata Garbha. And because every single sentient being possesses this, they are all worthy. And this is why even small insects, right, we regard them as significant. So And this is why the lamas of the ancient Kadampa tradition, one of them, for example, was known to, when he saw a songbird, place his hands in prostration at his heart, recognizing its element, its essential Buddha nature. And then also connected with this, Geshe was thinking that this might be inspired by a presentation of refuge that talks about the outer refuge, the inner refuge, the secret refuge, and the suchness refuge. It may have something to do with that as well. And slowly will come an explanation of those, but we won't push those for the moment. So of course our aim is extremely vast and profound. This is the actualization of the three jewels ourselves, to be able to reach the state of Buddhahood. But in terms of reaching that state, in terms of actualizing that, we know that practically this is something that has to occur in stages, right? Through putting in the efforts to train and purify our mind. And this treatise of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra is a particularly powerful one for that. So many of the teachings and texts that we study, if we think of all of the stages of the path, the Lam Rim literature, all of the Lojong, the mind training literature, they can really be said to be rooted in the principles of this treatise, the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. And some scholars say that actually if you read carefully, study and practice the teachings of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, if your mind does not shift, then there is probably nothing that can shift your mind at all, right? Some people say it like that. So this text can be like the rain, right? The rain of blessings that is going to ripen, to nourish the seed of the Tathagata Garbha within all of us. And so that should be the most entertaining thing ever, right? Like that should be the most entertaining thing ever to hear about. So we will continue with the text. Gansu Nishisa Gurube. Dagi semla nishin ale gede ladang laminam. Okay, so Geshe said that we are actually on verse 31, he thinks, but he wants to go back one verse to verse 30 because this will just frame beginning his text again better. So I am using the Bachelor translation because that's freely available, and I like people to be able to have the text without buying it necessarily, because it gets expensive if you buy every text, right? But I just wanted to say, having said that, he calls the kleshas, or the nyomong, disturbing conceptions. I don't like that translation, so you will hear me saying afflictions, or the afflictive emotions, rather than disturbing conceptions, because I think that translation can be confusing. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox now. Yeah, Geshe's like, are you done yet? I'm getting off my soapbox now. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, keeping him in the waiting room. Sorry about that. Should even all the gods and demigods rise up against me as my enemies, they could not lead nor place me in the roaring fires of the deepest hell. So this is a very evocative image. If we think about how many devas, gods or celestial beings, or asuras, demigods there are, they are countless in number. Even if they all arose together against us of one mind like an army, their power is not sufficient to be able to drag us into the lower realms. So by thinking these external opponents are the real enemies, we fall into so many misunderstandings, right? And it's serious. This is what causes wars in our world and so forth. And also we know we have this habit too, right? We have just a little bit of a difficulty or an unpleasant interaction with someone. We label them as an enemy and then we start treating them as an enemy, right? And that causes us so many problems. So of course, that is not the real enemy. Does that mean we're without enemies? No, we do have an enemy, but the real enemies are those that are within us. So there's a foe destroyer. We speak of holy beings that are foe destroyers. And there are 3 types of foe destroyers. In Tibetan, this word is dra chompa, right? There are the here foe destroyers, nyentu rangel dang. Right. The here foe destroyers, solitary realizer foe destroyers, and the Mahāyāna foe destroyers. And so this word in destroyer in Tibetan chom, it means to have completely destroyed the inner enemy or the foe of the afflictions and then gradually of their imprints. And so what is different about the Mahāyāna foe destroyer compared to the other two is that the foes are considered not just the afflictions themselves, but the imprints left behind by them. So the Mahāyāna foe destroyer extinguishes those as well. So both these kinds of foe destroyers, the Mahāyāna and the non-Mahāyāna foe destroyers, from the point of view of wisdom realizing emptiness, right? The realization that is cultivated, the object of knowledge is the same. There's no difference. So then you may ask, why is it that only the Mahāyāna foe destroyer is able to extinguish the imprints left behind by the afflictions as well, and the other ones are only able to extinguish the afflictions themselves? This is because their wisdom realizing emptiness is infused with the minds of love, compassion, and so forth. This is why they can overcome that. So then the text goes on to discuss what are these afflictions, what kind of enemy are they? We can look at the following passages as a description of this. But the mighty foe, those afflictions in a moment can cast me amidst those flames, which when met will cause not even the ashes of the king of mountains to remain. So thinking about and contemplating this verse, Geshe is saying, is not what he would describe as a relaxing activity. It's not a relaxing activity. So we ask kind of what kind of enemy are we talking about here? How powerful is this enemy of the afflictions? Right. Tell us, so tugires, tugimares. So tugires. Well, they are so powerful that as a consequence, the fires of those hells, they could even disintegrate Mount Meru, the king of mountains. Right. So, yep, Hakosung. So those fires of that hell are so powerful that they can overcome the ashes reduce beyond ashes the king of mountains. Our afflictions are enemies that can lead us to those very fires in just one brief moment.
Hakosung.
Yeah, then they consult de la titugires. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the sort of fear that we should have of the afflictions. So if we, and this can happen in a moment. Why can it happen in a moment? We know that if we don't work to reduce our afflictions, if we don't work to purify our negative karma, thinking we'll always do it later, we could die between this breath and the next in just a brief moment. Like a lot of people die eating their dinner, for example, right? Like that's not unheard of. That happens, right? Yeah. Ning kone Chusagin sana? Yeah. Ning chu mangtra latene ning ko drogas. Yeah. Okay. Di komanyo. No, komanyo. So Geshe was talking about, so I don't know, that's we do have someone who has a medical background. I don't know if he's here today, but Geshe was talking about a heart that has too much water in it. So the heart becomes overwhelmed by too much water and one passes away from some sort of heart attack. This is considered one of the less difficult ways to die, right? One of the more pleasant ways to die. I'm not sure what that is, but it's okay. So Geshe said, yeah, his mom had this last year. Luckily, she came through it. But it sounds like something like a congestive heart failure. I was going to say it's like a congestive heart failure. Yeah. There's also a gambling game using dice in Tibet called sho, and when you pick up the dice, you pick it up, it's almost like half a nut or a little box. So you pick it up like this and go like that. It said that some people kind of die halfway through putting down the dice, right? So that's how suddenly it could be. Right. So apparently this is quite a common thing that people pass away when they are lifting up this little box of dice. And so the thought is that because they're kind of moving the body in an upward direction and because the mind is very excited, this brings the water element, which is mostly in the bottom part of the body, up to the heart too quickly and the heart becomes overwhelmed. Yeah. And so this type of death is considered, from the physical point of view, one of the easier ones to endure. Verse 32, all other enemies are incapable of remaining for such a length of time as can my afflictions, the enduring enemy with neither beginning nor end. Right. So this verse number 32 is considered a really important tool of mindfulness, and so many holy beings say that if there's only a few verses that you can memorize, this should be one of the verses you do. Yeah, so there's a couple of important verses that we'll come across as we continue. So then the next part of the text is talking about what we've spoken about, these outer and these inner enemies, and talking about the difference in the generation and function of how these outer and inner enemies operate.
다 시다서는 뭐 가로서 뭐세는 다녀다 때지 투는 가로서 때지 뭐가 차야는 요하러 왔어. 다 텔다 알다스 당이네 말했더니 가서 담미다 요하러 왔어.
So when we speak about outer enemies, we can think of different people. So we might have a person that we know, and they do something to us. We have some sort of encounter which is unpleasant, and we develop a feeling of dislike for them, even if it's relatively minor. And slowly we label them as an enemy, even though they're not a real enemy.
다 전부 노대요. 가르레세레 다 다사 아주 자대한테 지제는 대세 튠튠 나니까 지를 그렇게 강해질라 되네. 근데 중화래 마도 지제는 체면을 조차노 그래. 지제는 샤왕아마가 다 녀자 첨부 이시그래.
So it is said to be a mistake to label people as enemies with this kind of haste. Why is this a mistake? Because the condition, the disagreement, or the unpleasantness that we had is just a very brief moment in time. It is very temporary. It's not sure that that dislike is going to last even the rest of this lifetime. And certainly we could end up friends, or even they could be the person close to us in a subsequent lifetime.
다 지제는 샤와샤마다가 롤 파마도 다 노더 소소도가 노메도 가리나 자시모 차 시그레 다고 말와스.
We can't say for certain that in our next lifetime that they won't be reborn with us in a very close proximity. So for example, as our sibling, as a child of the same father and mother that we will have. This is very possible.
다 된다 되니 드라세나만데 네바시비 디세테 코 투두라고 할레비뉴 때 디세 투두치레스.
But all of these lines of reasoning are to get us to appreciate one main point, which is that the circumstances that led us to labeling this person as an enemy, they're a very short duration, very short.
다 레방이네 요나 메생이네 요나 녀모피 다세데한테 부모 매반에 다다 바다 주주존이 레바르다스.
So if one has some intelligence, if one has some discernment, one realizes that the afflictions are not this temporary kind of enemy. The afflictions have been a steady enemy from beginningless rebirths within samsara, constantly causing us problems.
다 디셀이나 디셀이뭐 하고서라 다 강엘이는 강에 주고 차고 다 판다 뭔다 예수가 내도 가와이나 강에 주주대야 기대 녀모 받으래.
So, from the point of view of the duration of time, the afflictions as the enemy are far more significant than anything else. And also from the point of view of the problems that they can cause us. You know, they cause us so many problems, even compelling us to accumulate actions that lead us into the lower realms, for example. So they are the more serious enemy.
다 던릴 따와 다 다리 그 쉬지 마잖아 가디나 뜻하는 가디나 키 자임바 마제 어다 내봐 못하니 되게.
So if we don't today begin to take some effort to diminish these afflictive emotions, not only will they remain our enemy, but they will continue to cause us more and more problems. So that is an important point to understand. So realizing that it's difficult for people that we've had really serious misunderstandings with to all of a sudden not see them as an enemy, we can start with people with whom we have had minor misunderstandings, or people that irritate or annoy us. We can start trying to change the way that we interact with them, start seeing if we can shift something and see them actually as a person close to us and draw them nearer to us.
어다 가제 터다 당가로서 강가 지바로 와서 어레와 메비 점방아 세나 메비 점방아 세나 추구요 어다 대지 가제 터다 가서 셰 토바 주주래 되어래 녀래 셰기나.
And how do we do this in practice? Well, there is a practice known as the 5 types of generosity without hope of reward. Another way of calling it is the 5 types of generosity that do not suffer from miserliness. these are easy things to cultivate.
다 잘란다고 이내지 그게 파스테 제그 요는 간절로서 세나티 코강에 되요. 이제 다 데스 갈래요. 단다 데지 갈래체는 몇개 주저래 돼요.
And so why are they called the 5 types of generosity separated from miserliness? Because we know that when we have to give material things, then immediately there can be a sense of loss, a tight miserly feeling about this. But giving these 5 things does not require any material resources, so we will not experience miserliness.
어떤 가로서 다시 와서만 다른 돈도 가져와서 어떤 도이 깔는 다른 바 동보티 다 주보 야쇼테 천디가 다시 메뉴를 쓰고 와래.
And we also know another thing, which is also makes these practices very important, which is that when the end of this life comes, we're going to have to go on to the next life. And if we want to have at least moderately favorable material conditions, this is going to depend upon our activities of generosity.
어떤 데도 와서 어떤 대응 들어가자 말다 손지 롱이 깔라 첨보지래스 로 첨보지 어느 저가 너를 좀 가르치는 차바래스 손지를 깨졌지바래스.
And so these types of generosity without hope of reward or generosity parted from miserliness, these actually come from the Buddha himself. And there is a story connected with this, which is that the Buddha encountered a man who understood that he had to make merit, but because he was in poverty, he was despondent, thinking, how can I perform acts of generosity?
다음서 손지에서는 저렇더니 그게 가르쳐가. 디저 The
Buddha first explained to him that your current sort of state of difficulty is due to not having practiced generosity previously in previous lifetimes.
And
the man became very upset upon hearing that. He said, I am in a state of poverty. I am in a state of being old. I don't have any possessions that I can give, any wealth to share. How can I possibly shift that? How can I perform any type of generosity? The Buddha said that actually this is a mistaken view. First of all, you possess one of the most precious things that it is possible to possess, the basis of your human body. And it was at that time when he gave advice to this man on how to practice generosity that these 5 types of generosity parted from miserliness or without hope of reward were spoken by the Blessed One. Yeah. So Geshe said that the first 4 of these he's certain of, the 5 he's semi-certain. So anyways, I'll give these 5 generosities separated from miserliness. The first is showing a generous expression or a pleasing smile. The second is a generosity of speech, saying words that are pleasant or encouraging. The third is our way of looking or gazing upon others in a way that puts them at ease. The fourth is to bring forth good thoughts and intentions in the mind. And Geshe said the 5th, he thinks, is using the body to help others in some way. He believes that's the 5th type of generosity separated from miserliness. And so then also there's another broader category we can think of. When we see a human being or an animal that is in danger, for example, and we take means to protect them, this is a generosity of showing love and protecting from fear. So if we understand, these kind of episodes from the scriptures, they're illustrating easy ways to practice for us, right? So they can be very helpful. Geshe's not wearing his glasses today.
If
He's having problems reading, but he's denying he needs them. Anyways, if I agreeably honor and entrust myself to others, they will bring me benefit and happiness. But if I entrust myself to these to these afflictions, in future they will bring only misery and harm.
다 소식은 저와 때에 또 깨자시에도 다리 라바노 일리가 노지 깨자시에도 미기 따도 강간 저와 때에 또 오네라 때에 파 여바 제바이나 몸보지 논선 저왕도네 다리 피 여바 저왕도.
So let's take another contemplation of a difficult person that we encounter in this life, a person who we might label as an enemy just because they're a little bit difficult. If we make a determination that in our next interaction, I'm going to start by showing them a pleasant expression, I'm going to change the way that I speak to them or the language that I use, I'm going to change the way that I react to them. Sometimes, after making those changes, after one or several encounters, we'll find that the person's attitude towards us totally shifts, right? That often happens. So Geshe reflects on his own experiences in India. You know, there would be people who were very difficult, felt like an enemy. But then, you know, through trying to practice with this, months or years can go by, and that person that you previously saw as your enemy, they're like a very close friend, and you can't really imagine your life without them. Those shifts can happen. So what do these contemplations show us? They show us that that person that we say he or she is my enemy, they are actually not the real enemy at all, right? This is the message. What is the worst enemy? Attachment and the other afflictions within my mind. Why do I know this? Because the more time I spend with them, the more I interact with them, the worse and worse my mental state and circumstances become, right? This is very clear. So we know this, right? Like if we are, let's say that we have a good acquaintance with anger, right? We know that the longer that we sit with anger, the more and more disturbed our mind becomes, to the point that we often can't sit in the chair that we're sitting in anymore, right? We just get up and we're walking back and forth, just a prisoner to those thoughts of anger. And perhaps some of you have had the experience where you're really angry and you just feel like you have to break something, right? Like anger can even cause us to break our own possessions. That shows us that this is a real enemy, because unlike people who we might try different ways to spend time with, no matter what we do, the more time we spend with anger, it is just going to lead us into a worse and worse direction. It will become more and more consuming.
Yeah.
Verse 34, while in cyclic existence, how can I be joyful and unafraid if in my heart I readily prepare a place for this incessant enemy of long duration, the sole cause for the increase of all that harms me? So if we don't take the time to counter these afflictions through our stable engagement with the study and practice of the teachings, right? They are only going to be with us for longer and longer. Dimasona dene jebu karedes.
세시원 좋아지 또 마토나.
Yeah.
안들 지바 메바 동 달래래 기보 차야지. 아니 가디나 답하시 요 말에.
And the more entrenched they become, the less peaceful we will become, right? The less of a chance to be parted from fear will we experience, right? That's the consequence.
tindi bache. Endiswa.
수송아르베. korwe.
오야. 거의 제라 거의 젠제 수마 냐소서 세제 셰마 제반도나 가텔로니 초피 자와노 네나 돌아 대와 칼라요 같이 그모죠 아서서.
And how shall I ever have happiness if in a net of attachment within my mind there dwell the guardians of the prison of cyclic existence, their afflictions that become my butchers and tormentors of hell.
This one. What diga nyemoga lek shele hakoso.
Yep.
Nyemoga shele so de jagiares.
So when we speak about the afflictions from the point of view of their function, the afflictions can be said to possess three functions.
Nyemu tiga ta leka chembo so karchi gagiare zalava ina. Ngaroso koal kochini koishlo matone tabe deshilo ya matone jesun rawochine ko.
So one of sesungsen damgires.
Mara jesu zemba suke.
Zemba sunge.
zemba kubano ya da gosu de ro kusuma.
Kusuma da wachi.
Zemko suma.
Dene kandistrogeres. Konso korwa ne chilula joy.
Matone ngazo gosu anda wachi de de yare.
Right. So one of the ways that they can function is that they are like these tormentors, but Geshe-la's explaining it more like a summa. So it's like they are sort of like a bad sort of bodyguard or a bad guardian that keeps us within this wheel of cyclic existence. They prevent our escape from cyclic existence and liberation. The afflictions keep us within this wheel of cyclic existence. So that's one function. The second, which is even more serious than the first, is that the afflictions act as causes to bring us even into the lower realms of cyclic existence or samsara, even into the lower realms of suffering.
This one? Ta leka sambate, narosu kale jani dewa gjo. Kale jani dewa gjo da gewa yarwa. Gewa jipa meba zoki senche seki shema. Senche seki ter shi shemba sigrwa.
What's that?
Radu lu seki ter nidu akadi.
Yeah.
Shemba sigrwa.
Ale loso. Oh, hakusun.
Hakasaro.
Yeah.
Jiji shi shi seki du.
Yeah.
Yenda ter senche.
Okay.
Neba shiki ter shi ji seki yarwa.
Yeah.
Ota ten noji.
Yeah.
Narosu gewa kanga meba zoki.
Ale nganso pe dinango nganso gewa semshin din so nangula dua. Ane nyumon konso semshin segen da wochi kre duas. 마도쟁아 키네코 고마소.
한다스 데알 센지주도 마제. 니에드게 자. 게와 메바 조키가. 아까서 게와 메바 조키가 다 잘라 쪼테 냐모테레 생각했어. 센지 세컨다고 됐다.
셈신 세겐. 제. 데니 셈신 세겐이나 카리 세기열에 셈신 세기오 말에 게와 세기레스. 데니 데 셈신 게와기 페레도 앞에. Right. Okay. Yes. Sorry. Just trying to clarify something. So Geshe-la No, I was just trying to confirm something. So we see that there is a butcher that is mentioned here. This speaks of the third function of the afflictions. The third function of the afflictions is to destroy the merits that we have worked so hard to be able to accumulate. So here, the merits are likened to these animals, and the butcher that slays them is the afflictions. So the third function is that the afflictions degenerate, diminish, and destroy the merits that we put so much effort to accumulate.
Otati mimbe hakosarwas nyemono ta sochi ete shedu tabi dipa mesewa tabi kato mesewa noji kontro kechi chi ngaros gewa mombo pulo toro yowas.
So in this text as well, it says that there is no austerity like patience, and there is nothing more evil than anger. And that's because in the heat of a very intense anger, we know that many positive potentials or merits can be burned up.
다 나로서도 이도 이 쇼지 셈바서 이나요 콘트로티가 총설 강에 전에 쇼지 세 슈침본요 체 도보만 로알 베 네바 뭐 히유아레스
Again. Yeah.
쇼지 셈바서
And we know that even bodhisattvas, right, in the more initial stages of practice, if an anger arises that is intense enough, it can actually throw them off the bodhisattva path. It can destroy everything that they have worked so hard to achieve.
단데디 하고도 아슐로 가레레로네 고자게 있는 예목은 예미
Yeah.
고자 다 또야 돈이도 비시라 쇼쇼지 세 대지가 다 배제 그거야레스
So as we go through this text, especially these more difficult sections. Oh, did someone ask me something? What tech? Hold on a second. I saw something come up with my name. So, oh, now it's gone. Oh, which version is Kedrup using again? So Kedrup is using the Stephen Batchelor version of Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, which is available for free to download online. That's why I'm using that one. So, okay. Oh yeah, so back to what Geshe said. Yeah, sorry. When I see those messages pop up, I get distracted. So back to what Geshe said. So in terms of how to look at this text, right, you want to look at each verse as a meditation. So you want to root each verse of the meditation according to the topic. So right now, we are talking about the faults of the afflictions, right? In the earlier part of the text, we were talking about the benefits of things like love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So all of these things in the text are like meditation topics.
어떤데 와서 어다 된다 너는 노게 녀문데 저와치 돈에 다 거한테 포게피 가제트든 저와치 또 마토나 어다 기봉이네 된다로 야 말레스 야레스
So the overarching message here is that as long as we do not do something about the afflictions, we are going to remain sort of ensconced within samsara. And as long as we remain stuck in samsara, we will never be able to experience a lasting or meaningful happiness.
This one, no, 다 이나요 거까지 요바데 다 세고 논에라 다도 싫어 벌써 좀 바시에네라 다 대시 이네 코알 데비깔라미 대시도 야지와 다데 할래야기네 싫어서 간소.
But don't despair. Why don't we need to despair? Because we know that even though we are in samsara, even though we're experiencing these difficulties, that there is a way out. The method and wisdom practices that were praised earlier in the text, we can free ourselves with those.
엔티바지 다 진짜 소리 봐.
수미소주바 러스케.
그래서 대다르 제시 다기 단들 녀서도 네바마죠 대시 단들 쩨문도 제시 내지 다대 천지 돈 대성아
야야 나 가신 양주래.
제시 내지 중간라요 초제바
야. 나겔
도노 대마죠바 니 먹고
야 진냠주래. 야. So verse number 36, therefore, as long as this enemy is not slain with certainty before my very eyes, I shall never give up exerting myself towards that end. Having become angry at someone who caused only slight and short-lived harm, self-important people will not sleep until their enemy is overcome.
다 다리 녀모시 뭐뭐 레시자송아 스킬레카 가르치게요 단다 코장아 레카 가르치게요 마고팔 키카와 티그레 게자 뭐셰사요 이자.
So at this point, we've heard a lot about the faults of the afflictions. We understand their function. We understand the results that they bring us to. We understand where those afflictions lead us, right? So that's the message to now.
다 내서 던지지요 이자 다 가로 성인의 신은 먹이네 이나 다 디게 녀보 마셰 받아 될 팽내방이네 시토게 녀보지 마라 받아 어다 젠디디 파 너야요 말야요 말해.
So verse 36 is saying, if you're a human being, it's kind of heavy. So if you're a human being, right, and you recognize this should bring forth an extraordinary determination in you that you will not rest until you've been able to do something to diminish the afflictions.
다 빼나 중아 다 디수마서 차바르와 차바가 다 강에 쉐첨버지 여바이나 될 멜로자 알페가 말이 담다 가르잖아요. 이니 민저 중화지 다 보게 아까서라 오카 카테어즈는 밤에 와서 그요.
Sorry, I missed a part from that last bit. So that we won't rest until we have identified the correct antidote to the affliction and until we have cultivated it. Sorry, so that fits in with what Geshe is saying now, which is that we know he was going to say cold, but he said now it's kind of hot in Canada, at least, for today. So it's hot. That's what I said. Yeah. So it's hot today. So the only thing that is going to reduce this heat is its opposite opposing factor, which is cold. There's no other thing that is going to improve any suffering that may be related to this heat. And similarly, with the afflictions, right, when the mind is disturbed by that, we have all kinds of means that we could use to try to distract ourselves. We could try to go to sleep when we're feeling upset or depressed. Similarly, we could drink alcohol or so forth to numb that feeling, but none of those are the antidote that is the opposing factor. So the afflictions are just going to come right back.
So what
that means is that, like, those things are just mere stopgap distractions because they are not the opposing factor antidote to those afflictions. They are not going to lead to any meaningful diminishment of them. Yeah. So understanding method, understanding wisdom, developing knowledge about those, and then thinking within those points that I have understood about method and wisdom, which is the most appropriate to cultivate as the antidote here, right? This will be really helpful for us. So think about somebody who says something that upsets you. And because you're so upset, you start to feel hurt, and that leads to anger. The anger eventually becomes so prominent that you find that your sleep is disturbed. You don't even want to eat anything. Even food itself has no taste, right? It really starts to affect your activities. So you might have a conception like, if I can get back at that person, then finally I will be able to rest. Then finally I will be able to sleep again. I just definitely need to respond to this person. So you're really a skillful person, though, if you have that moment of awareness that realizes, if I am going to put so much effort into defeating a small enemy, why am I not putting any effort into diminishing the afflictions, right? Like, that's like the next thing that we should be thinking about. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, this, as we know from the previous sections, the afflictions have done us far more harm, have hindered us far more than this person that we are finding difficult at the moment. So we will pause our discussion of Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra here. And so it is 17th of May. So we are pausing it on verse 36. So page 15 in the Bachelor translation. Yeah, so I'm really sorry, everybody. I should have told you at the beginning, because we haven't, it feels like we've been doing this the whole time, but of course we've been rotating through the text. So we haven't done Śāntideva for a while. So I should have told you the version I'm using. It's the Stephen Batchelor. So if you Google Stephen Batchelor Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, you can find that for free download online. Yeah, I guess just asking what I'm sharing, just how to get the text. So developing an awareness of the faults or disadvantages of the coarser afflictions, of the faults of the more subtle afflictions, specifically ignorance, grasping at the self, this is really, really important.
어다를 못해서 대가셔서 어다든지 지다더니 타가 돈을 다 녀모라 빠르지 녀모 간데스 대거든 시라가 돈을 다 보게 녀모 타와서는 뭐도 자와 말이 비고 녀모 간데스 대거든.
So as practitioners, right, we develop this awareness of like, okay, these are the coarse afflictions, and these are the particular antidotes to each of those coarse afflictions. This is the subtle affliction of the ignorance grasping at the self. This is how we can develop various aspects of the wisdom realizing emptiness to overcome that subtle affliction.
녀모 타디도 말해 되네 이나요 숑바도 니지세나 예 숑바세나 컨트롤가 녀모
Yeah. So also to keep in mind that love and compassion, for example, although they are antidotes to anger, they are not the ultimate antidotes in the same way that emptiness is. So how it works is that because love and compassion are antidotes and are the opposing factors to anger, love and compassion and anger, it cannot really abide in the mind at the same time. Because they're opposing factors, right, that overcome each other the stronger they become, like heat and like cold.
다 이나요 숑바티 가제 곰바 이나요 콘트로테 파코르 추르토 토기아레 니파메바 오즈조 베드 니파메바조 토기아 마레.
So but they're not going to solve the problem of heat and cold forever, right? They will not solve the problem of heat and cold forever. Okay, what's happening with the... Okay, so yes, it is free. It is free. I will make sure... So if anyone doesn't know how to access the text for free, just email me and I will get it to you. I promise. Yeah, so they will not be the final... They will not be the final antidote to those afflictions.
Dice carresena 숑바티가 내서도 야포치 소노 또 야르테 이나요 콘트로 페게 소노 니네 또 대야데 베드 메바치 크이타 따토야 마레스.
But why are love and compassion not able to extinguish anger completely? Because they are not the opposing factor to the mistaken mind, the mistaken understanding that gave rise to that anger in the first place.
So
that's why it says later in the text that to completely overcome anger so that it never arises again, there is no other option than the wisdom realizing emptiness. And so that conversation is pretty complex. We have to think about how anger arises due to the way things appear to us, due to the way that we apprehend certain things, due to the way that we understand certain things. And a discussion of all of that is going to come later on in the text. So Geshe said, if you have any questions about what we have covered so far, then think about those. But because the view is very important, we're going to spend at least a couple of minutes of on the text, recognizing my mother, a profound song of the view. Yeah, and I'm really sorry, guys, about the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. I thought that that I had shared how to make that text available to folks. So if you're having problems, just email me. I promise I'll get it to you. It's free to download. It's freely available. Yeah, losoke. Gubadi losos.
Ludo data katso neten rotsare. Ludo data ji shachi lunker. Jomba nimbo yi shachi toni. Tari tsoai. Kale shoni. Lechi nipa yi mage tongre.
So verse number 9, Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti set their instructions upon the wind, and Manjushri Garba conveyed these to us by bird. So I hope to see my ever-present old mother without the hardship of a prolonged search. Page 6, verse 9.
gembolado pade dawa topic tani tawa ge ne so ti samote lungi ma khani le lungi khawa da go chi lung
Ale, look, right.
lungi ma khawa la tene tani lama chonga banjo ma nimbo
Right. Yep.
ti ngaro so le chi da to ne la
Yeah. So what he is reflecting here, right, is that the author is reflecting how these conversations came to him. And these conversations are carried like a currents on the wind, right? And then finally they are sent along by a bird directly. So the wind currents Geshe is saying is referring how these come from the Buddha and then go to great Panditas such as Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti. Manjushri Garba here refers to Lama Tsongkhapa. So we see him as receiving these through the currents of the wind-like blessings of those holy beings. And then directly to us, he sends us like a carrier pigeon, a bird, with these instructions on emptiness.
Lama Tsongkhapa pi tene karila tene tawa tumbani se te atha rimbol choya re mandus so le choya re dus.
And so the other thing that is saying here is that the
si sambatel
Siksambati di apo koma so
thari chowai kale shoni
yeah.
rimbol pata zono to de pa jane la so de lechi den dus sedo.
Yeah, so the emptiness that we are searching for is our old mother. We haven't realized that she is there all along, right? We haven't realized that we could come to understand her without this prolonged search, without looking elsewhere. So now we will go to the new verses. So we are going to start on verse 10.
So dala shembe noa lili the ruso jani gajarache chowa note.
So verse number 10. There seem to be among today's scholars some caught in a web of words like thoroughly withstanding and true existence, who seek only to negate some creature with horns while leaving intact this everyday appearance of solidity.
Tande lojo mombo yobache lojo ta shite yata yobache ta gajangine ko amshike.
So this verse is a critique of a specific type of practitioner, those people who have maybe studied and meditated to a certain degree, but yet they haven't been able to identify the object of negation. They haven't been able to identify what emptiness negates. Yeah, so then the thing is, if we're not able to identify the object of negation correctly, but try to meditate upon emptiness without doing that, there is a danger that our practice could not be fruitful, right? So that's why this is critiqued here.
Ta tenda tendi sig yare lojo mobozo sanele demba chaba to rungin chaba kayare o tet ko agare se soso sel tenda was ono to noa kare ina tetaga ro chipa ja.
Right. So we could say, okay, we've studied and practiced, and I understand what the view is saying. The view is saying that anything that is related to a conception of things existing from their own side, of things being inherently or truly existent, right? I have to banish that. But despite having that conviction, there might still be an appearance of inherent existence that is continuing. So the problem is, like, we can go through these things, but as long as this appearance of inherent existence is still there, right, we're not going to be able to come to success. And that's why we need to identify the object of negation.
nga koro de topic to chi tende yo are koro ji won na de to ba.
Right. So if we identify the object of negation, inherent existence, we can do this related to the self. So we can think, when I conceive of self, there's definitely this idea that there is an independent self that exists from its own side. There's a conception of that.
Te sosol tan tende te rawa te ji ja yo si ba rawas nga jala bi kala nga te pimbo te ji chuto me ba koro yo ban ba nga zo no chi tende yo are.
So just try this exercise. Think or say I, or think and say me, and observe what type of feeling arises when you say that. For most of us, it's going to be that there's some sort of independent entity that we don't have to designate on the basis of the aggregates, right? That doesn't arise dependently.
No lili te pe ja te tan te pe yo sho te nga chi na de te yo gan du. De chi
Yep.
na de be ta shi du po lu da wo ta ri mo ni je wo ji yo ba yin na. Ta de te yo pe yo sho te ren du si nga chi na.
So Geshe-la's favorite example, he was saying, is if you're driving on the car, in the car, I'm sorry, not on the car. If you're driving in the car and you see in the distance what looks like a beautiful green sphere. It looks like a solid green sphere in the distance.
Da no pa ta ri mo ta ri no lili du ni je wo da ba no chi tende du as nga zo po.
So it seems like there's this beautiful sort of, very sort of independently arisen green sphere on the horizon as we're driving.
Ta te pa le ka le ta ni ren ro yin tang gi du ni je wo te ko ka le ko yin ro du as.
But as we drive closer and closer and closer, then this green sphere seems to be less and less unitary. We start to see many different parts within it, and that initial appearance that we had of this solid green sphere begins to fall apart.
Ta te sha to me do le ndo le yo ke cha la me do re cho chi re ka le yin na yo are se yo are este le nga zo sha le la wo mo du as.
Yeah. So, this is the same case for any object that we first perceive as unitary, whether it is this green sphere, which is actually a tree, whether it is flowers, whether it is a table, right? Many different examples are given, but it can be quite difficult to develop a feeling for these examples within the mind.
Nga se de chi pa muta za la ba yin muta ni ne po gen zo chu za yo bi no wa jo no zo shu chen mo jin gu yo se.
As soon as we say the word car, for example, as soon as we say that, if you look at the mental image that arises, it's of like a solid, seemingly unitary automobile, right? This is how our mind processes.
Ta te ka le pa che che ba yin tang gi no wa li li se na mo du muta se a te ko du na won zo chu za yo bi no wa chen mo ji yo te. Te ni ne zo ne ko go ja ji re de yo res.
But if we examine closer, we'll see that actually that unitary independent car is not unitary independent or inherently existent at all. It's something that we label based upon all of these small parts that come together. So these contemplations are what can break down this appearance of inherent existence.
No, then no wa sha bi ka la. Ta ko lo do te ni cha she pa do ka le yin na ma ti bi koro muta se and ni yo are so bi rungi ge no wa chi yo are.
We have this idea that the object exists from its own side. The initial appearance that we have of the car is of a unitary object, right? We think that the tires, the wheels, the hood, the trunk, all of the different parts of the car, we don't see them as individual parts initially. We just see this appearance of that unitary thing.
So if
that car existed in the way that it appeared, we'd have to be able to take out our wrench, disassemble every single part of the car, place it on the ground, and see that initial appearance of the unitary car there after we did that. So the first way to contemplate this emptiness of inherent existence is by taking the self as the object of examination. Tambo da de nipa pungbo rebe. Right, and sometimes we can do the exercise of looking if there's a findable self within the aggregates. For some this can be difficult. Karichane.
Men pimbo ti go ta wo te ska le khawa se ya res.
Ale, loso.
Kandi ina yo tambo ni ma chi la ta ho ta ka chwa man ra wa chi do.
So His Holiness reflected upon his experience working with these, and he said that one day he had a kind of experience that was really stood out from the others. And he thought, I've really understood this selflessness. I've really understood this. But a few days after that experience subsided, His Holiness reflected and said, it's only the coarser form of self-grasping that I've been able to diminish, not the subtle self-grasping. Whereas these days, His Holiness manifests the aspect more of coming very close to that realization of bodhicitta and emptiness. So we will pause our discussion here after verse 10, and we will leave some time for questions. So first let us, and of course everybody, as I always say, if you have to get on with your day, please do. Thanks for joining us. But you are most welcome for the Q&A after. But first we'll dedicate the merits. Changkya Semjo Rinpoche Maje Banam Jejo Rechi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Pewa Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Jejo Rechi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Pewa Sho Jambel Bao Jidar Kyamba Dang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejente Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Je Gewa Deda Tangje Radungo Desu Shebe Gyawa Tangje Ge Ngowa Gangla Chodo Ngavade Dagi Gewe Tsawa Degun Kyo Zambo Jeji Radungo Wargi Gangri Rawe Korwe Shingange Pendan Dewa Male Jungwene Chenre Siwan Tenzen Jatsoyi Shape Side Bardu Tenjochi. So before we take questions, I just want to ask, were people able to locate the link for the text? Because if not, I'll make sure I send that out.
The link is there in the
Is it there? Okay,
chat.
great. Yeah, no, it can be very frustrating not being able to find the text. So I'm glad. Thank you so much for whoever helped with that.
No, Kendra, if it was a link that cost money, it's only towards the end that Dave provided a free link. So unable to follow for that reason.
No, I mean, but to be honest, if I'm really honest with you, it's not my favorite translation, but I picked this one because I want things to be accessible for people, and it can get expensive paying for every book we do. So that's why I chose that one. But I'm glad it's still free. That makes me happy. Thank you, Deki Lee. Yeah. Any other questions?
What's your favorite translation?
What is my favorite translation? Thupten Jinpa's is absolutely lovely, of course, as his translations always are. There is a Kagyu translation of this text, which is very wonderful as well. I want to say, I'm trying to remember who that is from. It's maybe Sutram Jamso Rinpoche, maybe. I can't remember which Lam, unfortunately, but yeah, that's a really excellent one. And Berzin has, his translations are a challenge because of the vocabulary, but it's very excellent and precise. So on his website, Berzin Archives, that's good as well. But I also didn't pick that one because it's kind of disconnected on the website, not so easy to find, and I thought it might be just a little too challenging if some folks are new to this, but it's worth looking at. Geshe said, are there any questions today? Anything on socials, Dave?
We have a question from Martha here in the chat.
Sure.
Is there a line between anger and acting vehemently to set boundaries against others' behavior that bothers you, even if that approach is harsh?
Acting vehemently was the word, right?
Yes.
Like, so very, very, okay, like that's an interesting one for Tibetan. I'll say very, very strongly. Nganso kontro seria di dang mizendag nupa ma kea gi chedu satsam halepe shuk trakpo chik soya gi kepar yores dene satsam di kandes chik resa.
Shansu de kandes resa na ta me ta te kontro do nese me ba che.
Right. So this depends very much on the motivation behind the vehement or wrathful action. Geshe said that, it's okay sometimes to have a more forceful action to set boundaries, but it should not be conjoined with an ill intent or a wish to harm. If it is conjoined with an ill intent or a wish to harm, that takes us into anger and even worse. But sometimes, actually, like if we're facing someone who has kind of negatively minded, sometimes a slightly wrathful approach will actually benefit them, right? It can get some change happening. So as you're putting down this boundary, right, your manifestation might seem like you are angry, and there might be a slight taint of anger for most of us, right, as ordinary ones. But what you really want to make sure is that there's no vengeful intent, ill intent, or wish to harm behind that. That's very important. But if a person's engaging in negative activity, and you can see that this course of action is actually the most effective way to stop them from engaging in that negativity, then yes, this can be used sometimes. And if you can separate yourself from anger in your mind completely, that's the best. But for most of us humans, that might be a challenge. So just try to make sure there's no ill will or ill intent behind it. Yeah. So like it's really, even sometimes anger, if there's not an ill intent that's carrying over, sort of embedded within it, we're less likely to engage in a harmful thing as a result of that, right?
This way.
So yeah, I heard a very faint voice. Let me turn my volume up. Just give me a moment here. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, say it again, whoever was speaking. Did someone want to ask a question?
It sounded like Martha. It sounded like Martha.
Oh, maybe she was just saying thank you. Okay, thanks, Martha. But so Geshe wants to say more, actually. So Geshe said there's another part from this text that we were doing in the Netherlands, Uttara Tantra Shastra. And this particular text says that in terms of viewing an enemy, we can see afflictions as an enemy, but we should never see a sentient being as the enemy. So that's a very good advice. So there is that person, right, or that sentient being that is harming us or trying to harm us, but they are trying to harm us because of that affliction. So when we are thinking of that person, we have to separate between the affliction and between the agent, between the affliction and between the sentient being. This can be very helpful. His Holiness uses slightly different language to illustrate the same point. His Holiness says the difference between the affliction and the action. The difference between the affliction and the difference between the agent and the action. The difference between the agent and the action. His Holiness says, if we can, with a valid reason, defeat the evil action, stop the evil action, then that is absolutely acceptable. But we should never allow that to cause harm to the person, right? We don't want to label the person as the enemy.
아니 컨트롤 개념이 제바 아주 자대발에 컨트롤 코로 ngol tani phameba so ate uta nyamba chi tentus kindigisena noji in control nyambola zeba goni tale ka che chomba go zeba gon ke che yarwa
right
so so lo tani mahimba che
loso
control koro chitani la
all right
se no ne lebarwa
ale loso
control koro ngol tani control koro pham nzugu chi sameba so ate uta ke ba chi tentus ku yuas.
So His Holiness also speaks about, as a practitioner, when anger is arising within our mind, what are different strategies that we can use to cope with that? So for example, one of them, of course, can be to apply the antidote like patience or love and compassion immediately. The other one can be to step back from the anger and think, what is the nature of this anger? How is it arising? What is the appearance behind the arising of the anger? This can also be very useful.
Ngai yed ngai ngal tawa so tawa
Yeah.
senji control pa tawa ande chol tawa nyamu kari na ti ngol tawa.
So we turn backwards and we think, what's the anger like itself, or the other affliction like itself? What is the nature of the I that is experiencing the anger? How am I seeing this anger as mine? All of these can be useful exercises. The other thing we can notice too is that these feelings and even these afflictions are momentary, right? That when anger arises, it's often like a wave cresting, and then it can dissolve back into the surface of the ocean that is our mind. So that can be also be a very helpful way, through these kinds of observations and ways of thinking, especially when the anger has dissipated somewhat, to observe that. It's very also any type of sort of mental projection that is happening, any type of feeling that is happening, we can step back and observe its rising and it's falling away. This is a very skillful way to observe and cultivate. If we are able to observe and step back in this way, we can take some of the power out from these afflictions when they are arising. And then once there's a little space between us and the intensity of that experience, we can cultivate the direct antidotes to the affliction more effectively. So we can cultivate like this as well. So I saw another hand up there, but now it's disappeared. Was there another question? Yes, go ahead. Carol, I think. Go ahead, Carol. Yep.
Would Geshe Sonam like to add any comments? Because a lot of what he's just said applies to my question. But
right.
How to let go of attachment to one's own children being nice to you.
Okay, yes. I'm sure other parents may be wondering that as well. Soso puku yuna, soso puku nga yapuchik sogores ki duchak kandes nyungro tango sa.
Soso puku.
Yeah. Yeah. So pala amala yuna nge puku nga la yapuchik sogo gidus kadi ne tawachik yores. Tawadi giduchak kandes nyungro tango resa. Yeah. Kung nga so yapuchik sogures nga kanin chambesan kung nga la kanin partego gidua tawati.
Tate me te so mangnoji mayo ji yarwas. So mangnoji mayo ate so so nga ma ute noji pa jiddo yo mare so bachena.
So Geshe said it's a tricky one, but he's going to propose it anyway. So usually we're thinking like they're not fulfilling my expectations, which is like I've helped them, so now they should be nice to me. But as far as karma goes, if they're not being nice to us, it's because we haven't created the cause for them to be nice to us, even though we think we may have.
tandi chani la sono to yare tani o korol kari chembo sosa jibo mare tan ro yo zo ngine chena kari chembo was tandi gi chani wong yin men jingal tandi shu chabo so ga ji se chara.
Another way is just to try and have a bit of a Mahāyāna view about it, which is that it's not just me who has shown my child all of this kindness. All of these sentient beings are showing my child all of this kindness every single day. So why should I be attached to them seeing me and repaying my kindness, whereas all sentient beings have been kind to them? So that's another way. Geshe said the child should want to repay the kindness of the parents. If they have an understanding of cause and effect, he's not denying that. That's the ideal, right? But these days, children don't necessarily understand those relationships. We don't know how to think about those things. Things are very complicated. So it often doesn't work out that way. But actually, like repaying the kindness of our parents and trying to integrate this with our practice of the Bodhisattva path, that can actually be very helpful. It's what we should do, actually. The other thing too could be to turn the lens on ourselves and think, from me reacting in disappointment because I'm attached to getting some sort of response in accordance to what I expect, this kind of rebuilds that relationship of dependence and attachment, and as that attachment increases, my suffering will only increase. So I don't want to think like this about it anymore. So actually for this is a pretty common experience, right? There's many different ways of thinking about it that we could try, and we could see what works best. Yeah, so just take a note of a couple of these and try different ones and see which one works best for you. Okay. So I think we've answered Carol's question. I saw another hand, and I think the name looks like Avis to me, so I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Well, there's many pronunciations. Don't worry about it. I wanted to ask if you could point to more texts and commentaries exploring the afflictions, the primary and the secondary afflictions, and the antidotes and how to deal with them.
Yes. So a question about any other texts or teachings about the primary and secondary afflictions and the antidotes to cultivate, right? Okay. Nganso di Sanyun dang nyomong jendag dinso dang kandislaw gre nyomong dinso gi nyambo kola hakoe gi dupayuna jung taya yaga karedus. Semdang semjung dang di enso. Yeah, Jungaksha Karis. Do call it as Manga Hakuninjana? Right. So Geshe is directing your attention particularly to the teachings on mind and mental factors, which are often presented together with the Loric teachings, the awareness and knowers. So the mind and mental factor teachings, Semdang Semjung. So those are really great for understanding the afflictions themselves. And although the antidotes are sometimes mentioned in passing in some of those teachings, they're not mentioned in detail. So to know more about the antidotes to the afflictions, really it's good to study the Lamrim, the stages of the path teachings, and the Lojong, the mind training teachings. So for example, you could start with the Lamrim, whether the Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise, or Lamrim Timbo. So this also doesn't mean you have to read the entirety of all of those texts, right? The Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise itself, is quite long. But you would locate, okay, where are the teachings on the afflictions? So you could look up the afflictions and mind and mental factors. Then you know the names of those afflictions. So those sections in the Lamrim, the stages of the path, would describe their antidotes, for example. So you could learn like that. Yeah, so Geshe said also when he recommends texts, sometimes it can get overwhelming because we think, we have to read the whole book then. But it's perfectly acceptable to go to the section of what we want to look at, right? What's most relevant. Yeah.
아고서와 니년본데레 사치도 리라고라와스 다 대표마를 거기도 제가 간일 때 가르가르.
And so Geshe said, learning the affliction and their antidotes, that's kind of like the first step. But we need to go deeper, right? So we need to understand the causes and conditions that give rise to the afflictions as well. That's really going to help you with this topic too.
어떤 갈래가 라티오는 코로나에 보시서 가지고 갈래 지니 바지
So much you said.
Yeah.
And Geshe said, thank you for the question as well, because it reminded him of, in addition to this text on recognizing the mother, as well as doing the text on the praise to Avalokiteshvara, he does want to do mind and mental factors as a side text because it's very short as one of our topics as well. Yeah. So thank you very much. I did hear another voice, so if there's another question, please go ahead. Yes, Dave, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave. Yep. I think you're still muted because I can't hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have a question on social media. This is from Bobby, who says, my apologies, as this is not directly related to today's teachings. Just wondering, which texts are helpful for dealing with grief? Thank you.
Which texts are helpful for dealing with grief? Deringdang jawa katuk yo mares gongda di Facebook ichiwachi. Yine nganso michik shina michik trongna rwa nganso shoryagi tsorwa di kola deb karetago geredus. Shoryagi tsorwa semchobo redua rwa di nyungru tangyagi tap deb yaksha kareres nangshagi deb.
다때 가르스케서로 가리가리
디디 군정람이 실은 안소 디
군정람이 잘세요 말와다
디고 차자서
모다서 아마도 다때 가르스케 쇼야가 좋아서 가르스케
미직 트롱난 안소 셈초보치기래
소소
야야 안소 인지케난 안소 쇼리아기 쪼로 세기래도 직 쇼르서 미사장보 직 쇼르서 노스로 grief 세기래다
야 다때도 저근데 왔어 다때도 세치하면 다때 저도 매매 저주 세야겠다니 너도도 하고서라 가와이나 육자 유아슈 가르시다 유니슬하나
He's thinking.
유니스나 괜찮지 가르스케서래
유니인거 말해로 준 가르에나 되기래 지금
유 가르에나 저근데는 다 Yeah, so
Geshe feels that for transforming these types of things, the lojong, or the mind training text, can be very helpful. And he also said you might find helpful the three principal aspects of the path, reading that text and learning about those. And specifically, like the stages of the path texts that are talking about samsara, the disadvantages of samsara, right? The benefits of liberation, those things can be helpful as well. On the basis of understanding that, right, the faults of samsara, impermanence, and so forth, we can come to an understanding that everything comes to an end. Everything passes away, right? Everything rises and falls. That can be helpful. And actually, in this text, the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, it speaks about that as well, how this is kind of the natural way of things, so not to despair. And if we can use these difficult experiences, right, to cultivate an awareness of the real difficulties of samsara for us and those loved ones, then we can also develop an appreciation for what we have, to develop the courage to cultivate the path to get out of samsara. That can be one way to transform it as well. And also to help the person, right? When a person has passed, if we engage in wholesome actions, in virtuous karma, and we dedicate the merit of those actions, that can benefit that person who has passed. So this is really good to do if you can.
코로그 빈자지 놈 저가이나 제메나 지 좋네라. 고가 시기 스코즈잖아.
랑진 세긴.
알레. 내가 미스 건여다시네 가르마기 가르라나 미셔도네 체네 소자로 지금 됐어.
So Geshe was remembering an incident
Yeah.
an incident recently that happened in Dharamsala, and it was either the brother or cousin of a lama, and the spouse had passed away. Sem kyobochagen pudirewa, kyogadirwa.
다 저가이나 제메나 지
Right. And with the loss of their partner, they were so upset that they just said that they wanted to kill themselves, that the grief was unendurable, and no matter what anybody said to them, they couldn't reduce that sadness. The parents were still alive. The parents tried to comfort him, his other family members, all of his kind people. So he was really, 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 really upset, right? And nobody could console him. Yeah. But his brother, sorry, it is kind of funny. I always worry about offending people. Maybe I worry about that too much. So anyways, what Geshe was saying is then his, so this Lama who was a retreatant, who was his relative, like his brother or something. So he told him, he said, now you're just thinking of the good things, but do you remember how much they irritated you when they were alive? These are all the bad things that you told me about this person. These are all the complaints you made. And as soon as he said that, the person stopped crying. So that was the only thing that got him to stop crying. Yeah. Before that, it really, he was really convinced he needed to end his life, that his despair was so great. But as soon as they reminded him of the difficult interactions, he had a more realistic view. Yeah. So in this way, his life was saved, right? He didn't end up taking his own life, and he was able to kind of slowly move past it. Yeah. But Geshe said, no matter how close we are, how much we love somebody, everybody has positive qualities and faults, right? Everyone has faults, and we've had difficult interactions with the people that we're close with. And that's true of every single person. So we have to see each person in their totality, even the people that are close to us, right? Everybody possesses positive qualities. Everybody possesses faults as well, right? That's part of the experience. Right. So one of the prayers that Milarepa made when he was in his retreat, he said, "May no one ever think of me whatsoever with either enmity or attachment, knowing that them thinking of him," right, because the things he did previously, I guess, could be disturbing to people, could cause people suffering. He said, may I be forgotten. Yeah. And also he told this to his disciples, don't come to a grief towards me when I pass. I do not want to cause you grief or upset or stress. If it is easier not to think about me, do not think of me. So that's an interesting perspective as well, something to think about. Yeah, so Geshe said that this is another really tricky situation, and we have to, see which of the strategies might be the best to think about it. But Geshe thinks that these difficulties, in terms of seeing how this is part of samsara, this is a fault of samsara, right? We lose people within samsara. Also that this is an experience that all sentient beings will experience. These are really helpful things to think about to enrich our practice. So look carefully at the text, in particular the Lojong or mind training text, as well as this text of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. And as you look through those, you may find some things that are of comfort, right, as you deal with this. Yeah. What?
단데 니에 자침보 소속 지니제 손으로 돈이 되네 소설 강의도 되게 알아왔어.
Yeah.
다 시용원에 숑바도 니지가 내가 지다 도바이나.
Zemshin Chatsa.
세전에 몸보지 요하래 다 나보다.
Another thing that is really helpful to do is, the difficulties with this grief or loss is because of a person who is very close to us. So if we cultivate a universal love and compassion that is based upon a closeness with wider and wider circles of sentient beings, that can be very helpful for dealing with this as well. So I think we'll pause there. And before we go, is there any other questions?
Do to the share good mug.
I'm going to go
to
So if there's no other questions, then we will end the session for today, and we will see you next week, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the long weekend. Take care.
Bye.